Oh no. Oh my gosh. Hello, everybody. I am having some very interesting technical difficulties today, but I see that the clock is ticking and some very odd things are happening. But today's Thursday, so that means it is time for Let's Talk Power Live. If you're here hanging with me today, thank you for your patience. I do appreciate that. If you're catching the replay on this, I love technology until I don't. Today is Thursday, and I'm here. I'm Dr. Tanji, and I am the CEO and I'm the principal consultant of Liaison Educational Partners, where we seek to ensure that every student has access to the great education that they deserve. If you've been hanging out with us, you know that we've been really spending some time over the last few weeks talking about this October shift. And I want to spend some time today just kind of moving forward and wrapping up this month a little bit because we got a great surprise coming for you next week. But oftentimes I'm asked to explain why I talk about power. And I can explain that through this quote. This quote is by David Nyberg, and he is a leading researcher, and he deals with culture and power and education. And here's what he had to say. Education is the instrument of democratic designs, and it is no less the instrument of power. The control of information, the shaping of understanding, and the influence of judgment are critical elements common to democratic design, power theory, and educational philosophy. That is what happens with power. It is endemic to all of our relationships. It is a driving factor, not between, but how we interact with one another. There are always dynamics of power at work at some way, shape, or form based upon multitude of elements and components. But I talk about it in education because it is no less real in education than it is in the outside world. Unfortunately, I'll go back, not the outside world, the world outside of school. I'm very particular about that because people say real world as though school is not real. School's a real place. So I want to be very clear. The world outside of school talks about power, and I talk about power in the world of school and make it operational and very specific. So you've heard me talk. If you've been with me, you've met me, you've seen me talk, read my work, you know I talk very specifically about instructional power. So there's power, and I boil it down and go a step further, and I talk about instructional power. And here is how I define it. Instructional power can be understood as an educator's use of their state, district, and building ascribed authority to afford or constrain a student's access to learning. That's a lot of language in there, but it's very simple. What it means is an educator at any level, state, district, school, classroom, you have lines of authority. And how you use those lines of authority can lead to students being afforded access to an excellent education or denied that access of education. That is what I mean by instructional power. Oh, one more thing. Have you hit that like button yet? Have you subscribed to this channel yet? Please do those. And if what you're hearing today is resonating with you and you think others should hear it, please go ahead and share. I wanted to make sure I said that because I'll forget sometimes. So in case you have missed the last few weeks of October and what we've been talking about. October is a tricky time. I am actually in a school building right now, and I was meeting with the principal and her leadership team, and they were talking about some changes that they've noticed. And every few words, she would say, "It's October, it's October." That is why I hosted my Leaders October Pivot Masterclass last week. But she was saying that because what we have been talking about are the critical shifts in October. October is a mirror to what is happening in your learning environment. It really is a window into some of the shifts that you might have missed. It is also an opportunity for you to step back and really examine some of the structures and some of the strategies and some of the systems you have been holding on to that worked in the beginning of the year, but may not be working right now because in the last, I would say 3 weeks, you're probably experiencing higher morale challenges. You're probably experiencing some upticks in discipline referrals. You might even be seeing an increase in attendance or lack thereof, right? People not coming to school, students not coming to school, and the adults not coming to work. So you're feeling all of this, right? October can really test the system that you have. And that's what we've been talking about over these last few weeks. So what are we talking about? The hidden cost of this constant firefighting. October is a time when you do a lot of putting out fires, putting out fires, putting out fires, putting out fires. But there's a cost to that. There's a system level cost to that I want to highlight for us. So the cortisol that you might be creating as reactions to all the fires viewing, it really is damaging to your system. And last year, I did a whole series on the damages of cortisol and high stress in buildings. I might bring that back. But while we're doing all this firefighting, it has its own cortisol issues going on right now. But one thing I want to talk about is there is staff fatigue, right? It masks real feedback, but they're really getting tired. Students are beginning to feel the pressure before we do. You see it in their actions. You see it in sometimes more heads down on tables, less interaction in lessons. Systems can't stabilize what they never studied. And that's critical because if you're not really taking a strategic look at what's happening in your system, you can't stabilize it. And then I already said that chronic stress that's flooding your system is that cortisol, but the clarity is going to fade before the capacity really fails. So what you want to do is you want to build capacity in order to stem the tide of the chronic stresses that you might be feeling. So that's the hidden cost of these fires, right? We feel like firefighters. I have a firefighter hat on that we're really feeling and addressing and might be experiencing right now in this time. And there's a time when you could be doing one of two things. You can crash and burn, or you can really step back and consider how to thrive in this time. That's a choice because normally what we do is we lean back into the most familiar behaviors and actions, tighter controls, more meetings, more ways of putting people in the quote unquote box. That's going to increase the cortisol because it's going to increase your stress levels and it's going to erode trust. But what does it look like if during this time, when it feels like your system and your structures are breaking down, that they might actually be giving you an opportunity to build back up and thrive? And what you want to do is you want to think through the fog that's happening and get into ways of being more clear. You need clarity. And clarity comes when you are looking at your system through not just the traditional lenses, right? We're going to have benchmark assessments come up. If not already, they're on the way. Your marking periods are at the halfway mark, so progress reports are going up. You might even be having students come in talking about what can I do to improve my grade in your class, in this school? What can I do? Those kinds of questions are the signals, but they're signaling something different. They are signaling the need to look at your data from a human side and from a number side. We have become accustomed to the number side, and we want to look at the numbers because the numbers tell us something. But if all we do is look at the numbers, we have an incomplete story. So I want us to think about going from the fog, moving into getting some clarity. So most times when we go through our sessions together, we talk a lot about power moves. And I give you 3 power moves. This week, I'm going to do something a little bit different because we're going to go a little bit deeper with our power moves. I'm going to give you one. I'm going to give you one really strong power move and walk you through some structures. So here we go. The first thing I want you to think through is your protocols for process and progress. Here at Liaison Educational Partners, we have a 5-phase partnership process. And we look at learning, planning, application, evaluation, and integration. Why am I using this right now? I'm using this right now because at this time, you probably are doing a lot of learning because you're gathering data. What we want to do is lean into evaluation. Want to evaluate your environmental factors, your communication clarity, and your system reliability. So rather than leaning into learning, we normally go in and we lean into learning first. We want to lean into evaluation at this juncture in the school year. Not taking a step back necessarily, but pausing for a moment, looking at what are the environmental factors driving the conditions or the cultural dynamics you're feeling right now. We know that through it was called the Teaching and Learning International Survey, they found that 22% of educators feel more connected to their buildings when their leaders lean into evaluation and feedback, not evaluation as a getcha or a gotcha, but really leaning into evaluating the quality of the learning environment. So that's what I want you to look at. What environmental factors are you capturing? We talk a lot about social and emotional learning and social emotional supports. What are the emotional structures at work in your building right now? Are they leaning to an environment where everyone is feeling connected, or are they fraying at the edges? Where are you seeing some measure of the environment in need of a recharge, of a reset? If you're the leader and you're watching me, thank you. I'm so glad you're here. If you're an educator and you're watching me, thank you. I want to talk to my leaders right now. When you look at the environment and you feel some fray, ask yourself the question, where is the fraying happening? Whose voices are rising to the top? Complaining is a message. Complaining is a data source. What are people complaining about? What are they griping about? What is creating what feels like a negative energy? And for my educators who are watching, those who lead classrooms, what environmental factors are your students leading you to notice? Are you seeing more kids with their heads down? Are you noticing your students who are multilingual learners and your students who are getting exceptional services? What are they signaling to you? This is particularly important for my middle school leaders and classroom educators. The middle school, as you have heard me say, is a crucial time where the body and the brain is undergoing seismic shifts. So what's happening in your environment? What are those factors? On the communication, is it clear? I say these things sometimes. It felt clear in my head. Is it clear coming out of my mouth? Ask for clarification. Ask your people, ask your students, was that clear to you? Because when we communicate more, we have a tendency to communicate fast. So hit the pause button for a moment on your communication. Read that email one more extra time, right? Before you make an announcement, decide one, is it necessary at that moment? And two, is it something that you really, hey, brown girl, interrupting, I'm so glad you're here, thank you. Are you really making it something that people can hear you in the way that they need to hear it? That's critical. And then your system reliability. We have systems. In the beginning of the year, we have systems that really, really hold true in the beginning of the year. This time of year, you're going to have to reset them, revisit them, and decide if you keep them or if you decide that you change them. Because sometimes you might have to change them and shift them up. Your ground is shifting around you. So that's the leadership reset that I want to talk about first. And then I want to really go into this collect, connect, and conclude. So first things first, let's look at this. Collect. Don't drown in data. Find the patterns that matter, right? That TALIS in 2024 found that most leaders collect data for compliance, not insight. I call it the drip. You are data rich, but you are information poor, and you want to avoid the drip. What data matters, even when you have to comply with a district or state? You as a building leader still have the autonomy to focus your staff and your instructional leadership team on what matters. And then connect. Create meaning through dialogue. Collaboration turns numbers into narrative. What story is your data telling you? That's your question. And it's telling something. The question is what? And when you connect it to actual children, actual teachers. I was joining a leadership meeting yesterday, and I was struck by how the instructional leadership support team was making actual connections to named students. When they were talking about students who were doing well with writing, they could name actual students. And all too often, we let the numbers tell the story. These are humans. Every number is connected to an actual human being. And then close the loop, one intentional action, not 10 scattered initiatives. I worked with a school many, many years ago, and the principal was known as an initiative hound. Every conference, retreat she went to, her staff was bracing themselves for the new thing they would have to do when she got back. Be careful of that, because that will fray your system even more. Be careful not to overload and be an initiative hound without really understanding what's happening with the current structures on the ground. So what's the leadership trap, right? Without evaluation, you keep rehearsing the old reactions. You've got to, as a leader, and again, lead building, lead district, lead state, lead classroom. You have to know the structures. Your eyes have to be widened so you're really thinking through what it means to lead. So I want to give us a little bit of research background. If you've been in any session of mine, you know leaders that the research is a big component of what I share. So let's dig in a little bit. Reflective leadership, 22% increase in staff morale when leaders are reflective. And it's not just saying, oh, I own this mistake or I own that mistake. That, yes, do that. But real reflection that brings in multiple voices will get you a 22% increase in staff morale. They feel connected. They feel like they're being actually seen and heard in authentic ways. Reflection strengthens the adult student relationships. That came out of a major study in 2019. And that is about the adult who leads a classroom, helping the students reflect, but also reflecting on their own, looking at the lessons, looking at what's working, looking at what didn't work so well, and learning the most from that. And the reflective leaders sustain clarity and they sustain the culture, the cultural environment. Critical work that the leader has such an impact on student outcomes. 25%, according to the Wallace Foundation, 25% of student outcomes can be directly linked to a principal and the style of the principal. So these are the research information that grounds this idea of what you might be experiencing during this October time. So let's recap a little bit. What have we talked about? We've talked about firefighting really is a reactive way of leading. It is familiar. It is something we lean into quite a bit, but it really is reactive. And then balancing requires some pausing. We want to pause, take a breath. Pivoting requires evaluation. You've got to evaluate those factors, right? Your environmental factors, your communication clarity, and the systems that are reliable and those that are not. And then future building leads to empowering. You can't change what's happening during October right now. But what you can do is really consider how to evaluate what's happening in your environment to ensure that going forward, it really becomes the environment you set out for it to be. That's really critical. So you know me, I'm going to give you a gem for your journey. Want to remind you, one, to please subscribe, to please like, and to please share. So here's your journey. I want to share with you our newest tool. It's called Data to Action. Reflection isn't a retreat, it's the reset. This, a leadership reflection tool, will simplify your decision-making life. It's going to really help you gain clarity on what it means to wade through this October and come out a winner. You want to really give yourself some ways to consider your environment. And I want to share with you what this looks like. You know, there's the code coming across the bottom for you, and there is the QR code that you can scan. If you're here joining me, scan. Thank you for being here with me live. If you are going to join the replay, you can still access this tool. Fantastic way to really dig into what you are facing right now during this time in October. You're around week 8. So week 8, week 6, that 6 to 8 week timetable where the environment really becomes something you aren't expecting. A lot of things are happening around us. Our environment in the world outside of school is really volatile. and that's coming into school as well. So please go ahead. That is our tool for today. You know, we love a good tool, want to be supportive partner in helping you get the environments that you create and that you really want. And then, you know, do you have your book? Do you have understanding your instructional power? That is the basis for all of the work that we do here with Let's Talk Power Live. I give you the research, I give you some case studies, and really help you look at your environment in a real and tangible way. And then I fall on the knife myself and give you my story about how I walked out of being a power protector and really leaned into agency development and empowerment. So get your copy of the book. But here's something I'm super proud of. I've been telling you it's coming, it's coming, it's coming, it's coming. So here it is. Because of you, I am. That is the understanding, the underlying principle of Ubuntu pedagogy. Well, next week, we're doing two things. Number one thing, we are changing our time to 5:30 p.m. And we're going to kick off our new time with our first guest, Dr. Alicia Blackwood, professor, researcher. She's a professor at Longwood University in Virginia. She and I are going to talk about the power of partnership. And we're going to do that through her book, Ubuntu Pedagogy. Love for you to join us then at our new time so you can actually learn from her, meet her. I'm thrilled to have you join us together as we look into the power of partnership, understanding that because of I, there's a we. And we're looking forward to having you join us. And so, as always, thank you so much for joining Let's Talk Power Live, and I look forward to seeing you next week.